About a year ago, in 2025, I was working as an apprentice electrician in a science lab, and my duty during that job was to run these so-called J-hooks. They were literally shaped like a J across the whole entire ceiling in many different hallways, just to get the cable through. And there was this elderly guy I was working with. He wasn't that old, but he wasn't that young either, so somewhere in between. Let's call him David. So David was telling me to run hooks, and I had no clue what he was talking about at the time because I've never done this before. He was telling me to run hooks from there to there, then there to there, and then there to there. He was literally laying out a plan for me to run hooks, and as I was at the time, I wasn't the best at remembering things and retaining everything in at first, so I was pretty hesitant at first before running the hooks. And I saw what he was pointing to at the ceilings, how I had to run them to get through the other obstacles in the ceilings, like the ductwork, the HVAC, the other things, and I did not seem too happy or comfortable about it because I had to go on a ladder, and I wasn't too fond on heights because I was climbing up a 10-foot ladder at the time. When I look up at the ceiling and started running the hooks, there was this like debris on the beams that I had to run the hooks. My hooks were supposed to go there, so at the time when I was trying to put the hooks on, this cheese from the beam would start falling down into my face, into my eyes, and that was probably one of the worst experiences when I tried to run the hooks, and I hated it. I'd get so uncomfortable, it'd go in my eyes, and I couldn't see, and I just didn't know how I was supposed to make this work because this beam cheese was falling off the beam. I was also worried that my trousers would get dirty because I actually had some good pairs that I'd usually wear to work every single day. But David also told me, oh, you're supposed to get dirty, you're supposed to, that's the point of the job, that's the job. And of course I understood that, but I just didn't like getting dirty because I didn't want to also ruin my car at the time. I didn't want to get that dirty, so it all connects into something. And so as I was running the hooks along the ceiling with the beam cheese in the way, trying to not get it in my eyes, David was right behind me, eyeing me down, seeing if I was doing it right. And honestly, it didn't make me any more comfortable just trying to do my job because he was just watching and I was basically doing all the hard work. It took me multiple hours to put those hooks up, and I was just climbing up the ladder, climbing back down, doing the same thing over and over again. Just putting hooks up, trying to not get my eyes, contaminated, I guess you could say. And fast forward a few hours later, it took me a few hours to get those hooks up. And come back to talk to David, and he wasn't too happy. As he was the foreman, he was the guy in charge. He told me I should have gone faster, I should have done better, should have done this much better, should have at least, should have. He wasn't complaining at me, but I saw it as constructive criticism. That's what he wanted to. And yeah, I wasn't the best at doing that, so it took me a while. And he understood. He was an understanding guy, which I appreciated at the time. There was roughly like an hour or so left until the end of the day. And so David told me to run hooks to prepare for tomorrow and the day after on this ceiling in this huge science lab. It was massive, by the way. You wouldn't believe it. It was almost like maybe almost like a school in a way. It was huge. And so it was roughly 12 o'clock at the time, and we were still running hooks. He joined in for here and there, and then he let me take care of the rest. And I was exhausted at the time, I tell you. Climbing up the ladder, climbing back down, moving the ladder, putting the hook up, climbing back up, doing the same thing over and over again. And before I know it, it was already almost time to leave. It was 2 o'clock. And at the time, there was other people working at this job. There were carpenters, there were plumbers, there were HVAC people. Those guys were starting to leave when we basically all came in at the same time. I look at David and I was telling him, are we gonna go? Are we good to go in a bit? I asked him those questions and he said, no, not until you've got those hooks up. Not until you've done that, and then we're good for today. And there was this awkward positioning I had to do to get these hooks up. It was like I had to run them around the corner, and then there was a big fat pipe in the way. So I had to get in between the pipe and run it between that and where I was. I was kind of stressing because that was also pretty narrow. The beams were like this close to each other, and I had to go in between to run my hooks. So it was not comfortable at all, given the fact that I had a certain amount of time to run those hooks before we could leave. And before you know it, it was already 2 of us at this job. It was dead silent, just 2 of us. And that got me so demotivated because I saw all these people leaving. And I was still just there alone with this guy, waiting to get this done. I guess trying to get this done as soon as possible. And I checked my phone and I saw time was ticking. Time was just going by. 3 o'clock was approaching. I was struggling so much to get these hooks up. This one thing that I had to do. It was a struggle. It really was. I was stressing. I was almost getting frustrated. I was annoyed. I couldn't make this work, and I tried to ask him for help, but he said, no, just, you got to do it yourself. He wanted me to do it myself, but I just wanted assistance at the time, but I never got any. And he was trying to do that for the best for me, to actually learn. I had to do it myself. I had to fail. I had to learn the hard way. Then I finally finish it. It's roughly 3 o'clock. And I managed to get those last few hooks up, and I was sweating. I wasn't satisfied because I was held back for an extra hour. He didn't make me go until I got those hooks up because he cared about his job. And I'm not gonna lie, I did not really care that much about the job. I just wanted to go home, do my work. I wanted to get paid. I could care less about the job. I really could care less. And when he told me it was time to go, I was feeling so much inside of me. And it wasn't happy, but it was actually anger, upset, frustration, annoyed. My car was parked at a garage, which was like a 5-minute walk from the science lab I was working at. So when he told me it was time to go, I got my bag, I got my tools, got everything I needed. And I ran out that door. I started sprinting, crying in tears coming out of my eyes. I felt so emotional, I felt so upset, I felt so broken. I actually felt hopeless. I gave up. I actually almost gave up. I was crying, wondering why this happened to me, why this happened to me that day. I never felt so defeated. I held all those tears in because I didn't want him to see me crying. I didn't want to see vulnerable. I didn't want him to witness what I was going through inside of my head. And so I started still sprinting towards the garage where my car was. I got into my car. I was still breaking down in tears inside of my car, wondering why I had to deal with this. Why did he make me stay for an hour? On the way home driving, it got to my mind. I wasn't playing any music. On the way home, I was just in my own thoughts. And I look back at that horrific moment of me sprinting, running towards my car, crying, wanting this day to be over. But it was over. I didn't give up entirely. I did what I had to do, even if it took me an extra hour, even if it took me the whole entire day, plus some extra hour or so. I still did it. And what I learned from that was to just keep going, even if it gets hard, even if you're in an uncomfortable and awkward situation. And trust me, that was probably one of the worst experiences I've had at the beginning of my journey of working. And it really did taught me a lot looking back at that day today. I was such a completely different person. I didn't like working. I didn't like getting uncomfortable. I didn't like getting my clothes dirty when it didn't really matter anyway. And it really did change me into a different person after going through that day. I actually felt more happy doing the hard work now, after experiencing those tough times in the trenches. starting from nothing to where I am today. Even if I'm not where I want to be, I feel like a completely different person from where I was a year ago. And that's honestly such a blessing to have. I encourage you to just keep going when things don't feel like they're going your way. You just got to keep going, keep pushing through, because there's always going to be an end. And if you give up, that's probably the worst decision that you can make. You're letting yourself and your future self down. And I came to terms with the fact that there's always going to be challenges in the way. There's always going to be obstacles, but it's our decision whether or not we can actually bypass those obstacles or just let them hold us back. For my instance, I didn't let that happen to me. I still continued going, even if I was almost broken. Don't fall down to some of the biggest obstacles or anything that's in your way in life. And know that there's always something great at the end. I hope you got something from this, and I'll see you in the next video.